The Baltimore Ravens suffered an injury scare at Sunday's practice. We talk about what happened, positive notes on Nate Wiggins, and more, plus a lot more content coming your way here on this episode of Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of Locked On Ravens. We are your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast, and I'm your host, Kevin Ostreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much, as always, for being here today and making Locked On Ravens a part of your day in general and your first listen each and every day. We're free and available for you on all podcasting platforms. So if you're an audio listener, whether that's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever and however you decide to listen, we have you covered, or in video form on YouTube. You can like the video, subscribe to the channel. We really appreciate that over here. Today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. A new week. The Ravens wrapped up week one of the preseason. They lose to the Philadelphia Eagles 16-13 in a wild and wacky game for the preseason. It was a crazy ending, and got to see a lot of good things from a lot of guys. Other guys maybe not so much, but we talked a lot about it over the course of the weekend. We had an instant reaction episode to that show. We talked about the game, and we also had a lot of other things that we did, including a bonus episode that we did where we talked about stock up and stock down. So we'll, of course, talk about that throughout today's show a little bit as well, but we also have a bunch to talk about in terms of practice on Sunday. Yesterday, the Ravens suffered a major injury scare, and I think got the hearts beating of a lot of people. We'll talk about the updates with that. The player was Kyle Hamilton, so we'll talk about that. And then we also got some updates on Nate Wiggins and some others as well that were in the positive realm, right? Nate Wiggins, we'll talk about what his status is after suffering that injury against the Eagles. Rashad Bateman we got news on, so we have a lot to talk about. And then again, we'll get into the Eagles game as well as some practice notes from Sunday from Lamar Jackson, Isaiah Likely, and more. So we have a lot to get into, but this is a very special episode for me. I've been hyping it up for the past couple of weeks, and today's the day, August 12th. It's my 5-year anniversary of hosting this show. Started back in 2019, and what was a much different podcaster, content creator back then. And my first episode, I would not go back and listen to that if I were you. Again, I did not know how to use my voice the right way in terms of the right inflections and just being energetic. It was a process, but this has been an incredible journey for me. And I'll talk about it a little later too. I don't want to take up the whole first segment talking about it, but this is episode 1,311 consecutive ever since the day I started on August 12th, 2019. I have not missed an episode of this show 5 days a week, every single weekday. That includes holidays, et cetera, et cetera. I've been doing this. I've not missed an episode, and I take a lot of pride in that streak. So it means a lot. The community's been so supportive of me. We've grown up multiple great communities, video form, audio form, social media, subtext, the whole 9 yards there. So just wanted to say thank you for that, to everybody who's gotten me to this point. I mean, it's been great. So again, I'll get into a little bit later in the show as we kind of wrap up, but let's talk about the injury scare that happened to Baltimore on Sunday. Kyle Hamilton, as I said, was the name, and apparently, but with about 25 minutes to go in the practice, Hamilton ended up going down with a leg injury. He walked off the field under his own power with the trainers. He ended up running up to contest a pass and fell to the ground. And apparently, according to some, Jameson Hensley with this report, it didn't appear there was any contact. And Jess Rebeck ended up talking about he was down for a little bit before he ended up limping off, walked back to the locker room with a little bit of a limp. And obviously that instantly became the biggest story of the day. John Harbaugh asked about it at practice or after practice by the media. And he said initially the leg looks stable. It looks good. There's going to be more testing involved to see the full extent of everything. But I would not be shocked if Kyle Hamilton missed some practice time, depending on what this is, right? Leg injury can be very specific. Is this an ankle? Is it a knee? Is it a foot? Whatever it is, the Ravens, we know they're extremely cautious with their guys. We'll talk about the other injury updates that we have gotten over the course of the last 24 hours here. But with Hamilton, that is a guy that you cannot afford to lose. If there is one player on this Baltimore defense, and I'm saying who's the most important player, if there's the most important player, if there's one player that Baltimore cannot afford to lose, it is Kyle Hamilton. Now, if you answer Roquan Smith to that question, I wouldn't blame you, right? It's so close between those two, but Hamilton has such versatility, and he's someone that is so good at what he does. He can play again at all three levels of the field, and he's a menace, can do everything for this defense. So he's a guy that you really can't replace. There's really only one Kyle Hamilton, not that there are more than one Roquan Smith, right? Both of those guys are super important, but Kyle Hamilton just brings you so many elements, and his ability to just be a free roamer and do whatever this defense needs of him, especially for a Zach Orr-led defense now, it is imperative. So it looks like the Ravens did dodge another scare here. Looks like it's going to be no harm, no foul. Maybe, again, some practice time missed. We don't know the full extent, though, so I'm not just dubbing it, oh, okay, he's good, because we don't know yet. We'll obviously probably get more updates over the course of the week, maybe in the next day or two, I'd probably assume. But that's something that every team goes through. I know a lot of people are talking about right now, well, the Ravens secondary, man, they already have all these injuries and guys are going down left and right, and this team, this, that, and the other. Well, every other team is going through the same thing. Not to the extent that every other team is going through it. Obviously, there is certain levels to it, and some teams are dealing with a ton more injuries than others. But this is football, and every team deals with them in some way, shape, or form. But you're not just going to hold everybody out of practice. Like for these types of injuries, yes, you hold guys out of practice. You wait till they're healthy. There would be no greater mistake, in my opinion, than rushing a guy like Kyle Hamilton. We've talked about this with Rashad Bateman, with Tyler Linderbaum. You rush those guys back, and let's say they're at 85% or 80%, 75, whatever percentage you want to put on them, and they come back and they're not fully there, but you want to get the reps, and then they re-injure something, or they end up going down with something even more serious because they weren't able to fully heal that injury, at least as much as they could. And we're talking about practice reps, right? We're talking about practice in this situation. That, to me, is not worth it. Practice is important, but the health of your team going into week one is much more important. And look, I'm not saying the Ravens will do that. Again, as I said towards the top of the show, ever since really J.K. Dobbins tore his ACL in 2021 in the first series of that Washington preseason game, and then subsequently Gus Edwards and Marcus Peters tore their ACLs in practice, I think the Ravens have been very cautious with what they do, and that has gone to not playing their starters in the preseason nearly as much, and their practice, they did a whole deep dive on everything. Hamilton did have I believe it was a knee injury last year, wasn't it? I think it was the MCL, if I'm not mistaken, where he sprained it and was kind of working to play through that towards the end of the year. So we'll see if this is a week-long absence for him, multiple weeks, or maybe he's able to come back. And, we're not talking about this anymore. But to hear and to see that Kyle Hamilton went down in practice is probably the biggest blow this defense could have taken, assuming it was worst-case scenario. But according to John Harbaugh's updates, it does not look that way. So, again, we don't know the specifics of it yet, so I'm trying not to speculate too much, because there are a wide range of options, a wide range of outcomes, and a wide range of just what the severity of the injury could be. But again, it became the biggest news of the day because, we'll talk about Lamar. He had a great day at practice. Isaiah Likely was balling out in practice, but Kyle Hamilton and his status took precedent over all of that. And I think that's all anybody could think about as we were waiting for John Harbaugh to take the podium and speak. So, again, with Nate Wiggins and with Kyle Hamilton and with some of these guys as well, they have not suffered, outside of Malik Cam, they have not suffered any season-ending injuries. Other teams have. Malik Cam's been the one guy for them. Other teams have suffered multiple season-ending injuries. And for the Ravens, you just got to hope that these guys can stay healthy through practice, through these next couple of weeks, gearing up for week one against Kansas City. And speaking of Kansas City, Marquise Brown, I believe it was on the first play of the Chiefs and Jaguars preseason game, he suffered a pretty decently serious shoulder injury and had to stay at the hospital overnight in Jacksonville, and his week one availability is now in doubt. So different teams do it differently in terms of playing their starters in the preseason. The Ravens, obviously, with guys like Lamar, Derrick Henry, Hamilton, Roquan Smith, they don't do that now. But injuries can happen whenever in the game of football. Practice, non-contact, practice with contact, preseason, regular season. You are going to go through it if you play football. So that's kind of the risk you run, but it's about within the best interest of your players, getting them the reps that they need. But we're also like, if we're talking Hamilton, if we're talking Tyler Linderbaum, how many practice reps do these guys really need, right? I know there's a level of gelling with your defense, gelling with your offensive line, gelling with new teammates, and sometimes new systems like what the Ravens have with Zach Orr. But, those guys are all pros. Those guys have done it at the highest level. For a guy like Rashad Bateman, it's a little more imperative to get him practice reps, but not at the extent of the health. So I expect Baltimore to be cautious with this situation. Maybe he'll miss a couple of days and they're going to try to see it's 100% good. But again, as we get the injury diagnosis, we will understand more about what the timeline is for Kyle Hamilton. Coming up, though, in the second part of the show, we have updates on Nate Wiggins, Rashad Bateman, Linderbaum himself, and a lot more. So be sure to stay tuned. We got a lot to get to on Locked On Ravens. Don't go anywhere. First, this show is brought to you by LinkedIn. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. And for me, I've had a ton of great experiences over on LinkedIn, whether it's finding jobs, networking, connecting. LinkedIn has it all over there. And LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else. Even those who aren't actively searching for a new job might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might have the time and resources to hire. 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. Push your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to push your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. We're back, our second segment of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher still here with you on this Monday edition of the show. Really appreciate everybody for being here today and making Locked On Ravens a part of your day and your first listen each and every day. Be sure to make Locked On NFL your second listen of the day, where I obviously host that show over on Mondays. I've made that very clear on this show. And we talked a lot today about the wide receiver situation. Brandon Ayuk, is he going to Pittsburgh or not? CeeDee Lamb, what's going on over there? So if you want general NFL content, be sure to check out Locked On NFL. Now back to Ravens. Obviously, the other big storyline injury-wise was the injury suffered by Nate Wiggins against the Eagles on Friday. And again, on the broadcast, it looked like he wasn't really moving his arm, his shoulder. There were some concerns, but Jess Rebeck on Saturday ended up reporting that it didn't look like there was concern that he would miss regular season time. They were optimistic for week one. He avoided a really significant injury. And then we got the report from Jordan Schultz, who said that the injury was not as significant as initially feared by the Ravens, which was a piece of great news. And then John Harbaugh ended up speaking on it as well during his media availability, and ended up saying that it's not a serious injury, and actually joked about it a little bit, saying that it was the same drill that he suffered when he landed on his shoulder during that water hose, the fumble recovery drill. So seems like, again, Wiggins will miss some practice time for sure. Wouldn't expect him to play anymore in the preseason. I'd be pretty shocked. But again, the key is, are you ready for week one? That's the key there for Nate Wiggins. And he was impressive. I mean, he was so good in that preseason opener. He showed tenacity, was sticky in coverage. We talked about it. He threw his weight around, even though there's not a lot of it for him to throw around. He's more on he's slender in that category, but he was playing with that physicality despite not having a lot of weight to throw around. So I thought he was awesome. He, got a little grabby on one of his plays. I think it was the first pass breakup he had, but marginal enough to where it wasn't called. Could have turned his head around, maybe have a chance at an interception on his second one. But 3 noted pass breakups on the box score stat sheet. You had, I thought I saw 4, but I am not the box score stat sheet. But he was awesome. He was definitely the player of the game for the Ravens, or at least one of them, right? He was that good. And then, there are other options for the Ravens at corner while Nate Wiggins is recovering. They'll get probably more opportunities in there for Jalen Armour-Davis to show opportunities. Pepe Williams and Ardarius Washington in the slot with Arthur Millette out. But John Harbaugh also gave other injury updates, and one was on Arthur Millette, who, again, Pepe Williams and Ardarius Washington are going to be vying for those slot snaps. He said on Millette, there's still going to be something that's going on probably the first couple weeks of the season there. So I think the initial reports were he was going to miss like a month of the regular season to start. So this will be like a multi-month injury for him, it looks like. But since we are in August, it's not going to cost him multiple months of the regular season, it looks like. So, just as a generous timeline, I'd expect him back in early October. But there is certainly a chance he would return before then. David Ojabo was a big question mark of Friday when he didn't end up playing. And a lot of people were like, well, where is he? He's back at practice. What's going on here? And John Harbaugh ended up saying after the game that he was not cleared by doctors to play in the games. He's obviously cleared to practice. He's back, but cleared in the games, he's not that yet. So he was asked about him and said that he thinks that Ojabo will be cleared for preseason games, but that's up to the doctors. They decide that. They just didn't clear him for this game. Harbaugh said he's anticipating he will be and said he practiced at full speed on Sunday and looked good doing it. So I would probably say, if I had to give a prediction, I'll say he gets cleared for the final preseason game. No medical analysis behind that whatsoever. I'm just literally throwing a guess out there. I have no idea. Maybe he could be cleared by tomorrow to play in the preseason. We don't know. But for Ojabo, he is certainly one that needs a lot of preseason reps. He was already considered pretty raw coming out of college, has the pass rush moves, has the talent, but needed to put it all together, and he's already missed almost 2 full NFL seasons in his first 2 years. So he's someone that definitely needs to get on the same page as his teammates and just get in game action, because with Jadeveon Clowney gone, he's going to be someone who has to step up into that third outside linebacker spot. Would not be shocked if Baltimore brought in somebody else at that position at some point, though. Tez Walker has a bit of a rib thing. John Harbaugh saying he's been dealing with a little thing there, so he's limited with that. Should be good this week if nothing else happens, and he wants him to be out there taking a lot more reps than we saw. That was one of the big storylines too, is Tez Walker really didn't get out there as much, or he wasn't really involved as much as a lot of people wanted to see, myself included. I was really hoping we could see some flashes from Tez Walker, but just wasn't really involved. So hopefully next week and the rib thing will die down a little bit and he'll be able to play some more and be more effective in that game. For Adisa Isaac, Harbaugh said that he's right on schedule. And, he's hoping he ramps up quickly, limited practice for him, but it's going to be the hope that he ramps up, and he'd love to get him in the game, John Harbaugh said, if you can this week. So the Ravens have that game against Atlanta. We're going to see how that plays out for him. But Isaac is another guy where there are snaps up. There's production up for grabs in that outside linebacker room. I don't expect Isaac to play a huge role for the Ravens this year, but I said the same thing about Tavius Robinson last year and ended up playing a pretty big role. So he is someone that I would anticipate at least get some run when he's cleared in the preseason. We're going to see when that is. And then for Rasheen Ali and Sanusi Kane, both those guys did not practice on Sunday, as did not, Rashad Bateman did not as well. But he ended up saying about Ali and Sanusi Kane, both of those guys ended up being kind of stinger injuries in the game type of thing. They'll be fine. So I thought Kane played really well, personally, especially on special teams. Rasheen Ali, he was a stock down guy for me. I don't think he performed necessarily super well in this one. I think Owen Wright overtook him as a third running back. I think his roster spot is in jeopardy, even after he was a 5th round pick. And obviously the one that a lot of people are wondering about still is Rashad Bateman. John Harbaugh said when he went down that, wasn't a serious thing, and that still rings true. But we do know that the Ravens and injury timelines and them being public with that doesn't always line up that way. For example, Harbaugh said Linderbaum would be back last week, and of course he is not back. It is a new week. Maybe he's back today on Monday, but we're going to see how that ends up going. But Harbaugh did say that he expects Rashad Bateman to be back real soon. So what is real soon? Everybody has a different definition of real soon. Is real soon today? Is real soon in a week? Is real soon in 2 weeks? I don't know what that conversation is. We start getting into like multiple weeks. I don't think that's real soon anymore. But you do want to be cautious with these guys, right? If guys are taking a little longer, the recovery's not as fast as you anticipate, you don't want to rush them out there. That's the thing. You're not going to do that. You should not do that. And the Ravens have been good about not doing it. And again, everybody wants injury timelines. Everybody wants, okay, well, when is this guy going to be back? When is this going to be back? And sometimes you just don't know. John Harbaugh has just declined to answer questions about it in the past to not get himself in trouble with it, because we certainly know that he has done that to himself in the past, particularly with Lamar Jackson's injury. But I wouldn't be shocked if these guys are still held up on the shelf for a little longer, try to get them just making sure they're back at 100%, or at least as close to it as they can get, and then they're back out there. because even if they're like 95%, there's still that opportunity to heal up, and you're not really missing a ton for some of these guys like a Hamilton, like a Linderbaum, as we talked about earlier. So overall, I'd say pretty positive updates. I mean, especially considering the injury scare to Hamilton for initial tests and just initial information to indicate that the leg is stable and good. That is always a good sign. We'll kind of figure out what the testing situation is for that. But with Wiggins and Bateman and all these guys, hopefully they'll be able to be on the practice field soon and just heal up, because we know the Ravens will need every one of those guys to be able to compete for a Super Bowl this year. Coming up in the final part of the show, though, we'll be talking about practice notes from Sunday. Lamar Jackson, Isaiah Likely balled out. Lamar also expressed some practice frustration apparently as well. We'll talk about that, as well as diving a little bit more into the Eagles and Ravens game in preseason week 1. Stay tuned. We got a lot to get to here on the show. First, this show is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience to Formula F winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors is everything you need to maintain a vehicle and level up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has it covered. With over 120 million parts for a number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With the parts you need, the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible as always, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. And the show is brought to you by DK Law Group. When you need a law firm, do you want the legal runaround, or would you rather have a no-nonsense approach? Well, you get the latter with DK Law Group. DK Law Group is a Maryland-based law firm who is redefining the legal process with their modern approach. DK Law Group specializes in real estate law, estate planning, business law, and family law. They're tech-savvy, they treat clients like family, and they focus on keeping your legal solutions simple. DK Law Group is a woman-led firm with Diana Kahn at the helm. Diana has been called an unparalleled legal expert by some. One of the things we quickly noticed with DK Law Group is their transparent pricing. They believe in clarity and cost, and no one left in limbo. DK Law Group knows that speed is key. By leveraging technology, DK Law Group streamlines the process to serve you better and faster. Contact DK Law Group today at dklawmd.com. Locked On listeners and call today to schedule a free 30-minute consultation when you mention the tagline, Empowering Legacies. We're back, our final segment, Locked On Ravens, here on Monday. Kevin Oestreicher here with you, starting out another week. The Ravens wrapped up their week 1 preseason action. They lose to Philadelphia 16-13. We're going to talk a little more about that game, but first I do want to get more into practice notes from Sunday. So we have a lot to dive into. Again, if you're new to the show here, would really appreciate if you would hit that like button, subscribe to the channel on YouTube. If you're an audio listener, you're new to the show in audio form, be sure to follow along and subscribe over there. Again, this is my 5-year anniversary hosting this show. Back on August 12th, 2019 is when I started the journey here on Locked On Ravens. My first episode was about Kari Vedvik. So Ravens legend Kari Vedvik, we talked about him, and this team has evolved since then. I've evolved since then. Everybody has evolved since then, but it's been an awesome journey. So again, shout out to the community. Shout out to you, the listener, the watcher. It means the world to me to have this support and to have done this for 1,311 consecutive weekday episodes, the bonus content, the live streams, the short form content, which we're starting to do more of now, social media interactions. It's been incredible. So I can't thank everybody enough for their support for me and just what I've been able to do over these 5 years. So we're going to keep it going. I have a long way to go here, and I'm really excited to continue here on Locked On Ravens. But let's get into practice notes here. Lamar Jackson was exceptional by all accounts today. One of his best practices with the deep ball, apparently, where hit Isaiah Likely multiple times. Zay Flowers got in on the action as well. It was a great day for him deep ball wise, but there were some moments of frustration for Lamar Jackson apparently as well, where he ended up hitting Nelson Agholor on a deep shot, but Agholor dropped the ball and Lamar Jackson ended up ripping off his helmet, slamming it in frustration. And then Agholor ended up dropping a second pass, a second deep ball later in the practice. And Lamar Jackson, again, expressed his frustration. We know Lamar is a passionate player. Even in practice, he's super competitive. He wants the best for him and the best for his teammates. And he understands that, practice is an opportunity. Every snap is an opportunity. We talked about this last week too. I have no issue with Lamar expressing himself. No issue with Lamar expressing frustration. I know there are a lot of hot takes out there about, why is Lamar doing this? Why is Lamar expressing this? I mean, Lamar can express himself. It's not a crime for Lamar Jackson to express himself. It's not a crime for anybody to do that. So I feel like, to me, when you express your frustration in a way, you toss your helmet, you slam your helmet. Lamar's punted the football. Lamar's done a bunch of things. This is who Lamar Jackson is. He is a competitive person who, again, expresses his frustration in that way. But of course, Nelson Aguilar also needs to be better. I mean, Aguilar had a great year by his standards last season, but we do know the history with Nelson Aguilar. What's the biggest thing? It's drops. He's been known for his drops over the course of his career, so much so that he has had multiple viral memes made about it, and multiple news clips of guys saying stuff about him, dropping passes and all this different stuff. So Aguilar cannot revert to that type of player. He now has a bump in role. He's now the number 3 wide receiver on this team currently, with Odell Beckham Jr. now in Miami. So he's going to have to step it up. But we also know that Isaiah Likely and Mark Andrews are 2 other pass-catching weapons. So, of course, it's not all on the receivers to make plays, although, of course, the receivers do. And Likely had an incredible practice on Sunday, multiple long gains, and Jonas Schaefer of the Baltimore Banner ended up making some estimates on how long some of these plays were from Lamar to Likely. 20-yard catch on a touchdown, a deep crosser, plus the stare down for added effect. Jonas ended up saying 30-yard jump ball catch, and then a 50-yard one-handed catch and run score. And again, Jonas did estimate those yardage totals, but the Ravens, for their play of the day, or plays of the day, I guess, posted Likely and Lamar's connection. We got the one-handed snag on camera, on video, and Likely is going to ball out this season. He'd be a starter on 25 of 32 teams. I mean, he has everything they need out of that role. Him and Andrews make up, in my opinion, the best tight end duo in the NFL. And using them together is going to be key for this offense, because you can line up Likely anywhere. Andrews has his versatility as well. Andrews works in the middle of the field so well. I mean, I'm so excited to see what the Ravens do with those 2 guys, because I think it's been a long time coming to see both of these guys and Likely's not even at the peak of his powers yet, but Andrews being back healthy, Likely having 2 straight seasons of filling in well for him. This is the time for those 2 to step up together. We know Andrews has it. We know Likely has it. But how is Todd Monken? How is this offense going to use them together? That, to me, is one of the most intriguing storylines of the season. But then you have other news and notes from practice, which I think were encouraging for the most part. I mean, at the end of the day, Derrick Henry had another good practice. And again, as the pads have come on, as the physicality has ramped up, you can now see more and more of these running backs and them putting their skills on display. Henry apparently had another great practice. He had a couple of really big runs in there, had a touchdown, and then you have another huge run as well. So, look, in a Ravens uniform, he's going to be super important to play off of Lamar Jackson, to have that role. And as he continues to get used to this offense, again, he spent 8 years in Tennessee. It's going to be an adjustment for him. But Henry is still one of the best running backs in this league. I expect no drop-off, and he should be an incredible player in this offense, especially in a bell cow role. The bell cow role is not something the Ravens have had in the Lamar Jackson era ever. And then we'll see how that split is determined once Keaton Mitchell comes back. Now, a little bit more about the game. The Ravens again lost 16-13 to Philadelphia. I thought we did see a lot of positive performances, though. We talked about Nate Wiggins and how good he played in the game. I thought Trenton Simpson played really good football as well. He ended up having 11 total tackles and was flying around the field, entered his zones really well, and I thought just played downhill really effectively. Like, that's what I think he did. And, ended up passing off a couple of his run fits, but he'll learn. He'll learn that stuff. I also think on the offensive line, we saw a lot of encouraging performances. Andrew Voorhees, I think, stepped up in a great way. His timing was great. He was moving great. His lateral mobility was awesome. You could see his strength on display. He was stonewalling guys, pass protection, run blocking. I thought it was a very encouraging debut for Andrew Voorhees, someone that I think even further strengthened his grip on that left guard job, which I think has been his for a while now, but of course not officially. I thought Roger Rosengarten had a very good debut as well. Again, he was moving laterally well. I thought that he, for being a rookie coming in, some of the run blocking was a little questionable, but I thought in pass protection, it was everything as advertised, and the run blocking was to be expected because like Nate Wiggins, he's a little lighter than the average at the tackle position. But again, I think with an NFL offseason, that will completely be solved, and he will be a decent player right away, still with some growing pains, but I think Baltimore has to be pleased with what they saw there. I thought Ben Cleveland at center played pretty well. Obviously, they've been trying him there with Linderbaum being out. They don't really have a pure backup center on this roster, in my opinion. McCary is a guy who they wanted to super sixth guy, so I'm not counting him. But I thought that Ben Cleveland was good, and honestly, in my opinion, he is my favorite now. Again, he was, and he wasn't. Now he is again. He's my favorite to win that right guard job because Daniel Falele did not play well. Daniel Falele, while I think that he had moments, it wasn't a all-around, had every single play be terrible. It wasn't that, but there were definitely miscommunications, couldn't hold blocks well. There was a lot that went on with him that I was not encouraged by. He doesn't look like a natural guard. I think that, to me, he probably needs another year of seasoning. I don't know what his role is, but I feel like Cleveland is the safest option because, again, they want McCary in that super sub role. And I think that, again, you could maybe liken Ben Cleveland to what Ben Powers did in his final year with the Ravens. Could be a contract year, good year for Ben Cleveland. I thought Josh Johnson, the backup quarterbacks, did not play well in this game. The Ravens might have a backup quarterback issue. We'll have to evaluate that. I want to give them one more preseason game before I go fully in on that, but we'll have to see. Other guys that played well, I thought Josh Ross played really well. I thought Tylan Wallace had a good game. Owen Wright played really well. Dayton Wade had a tough drop early, but recovered really well. I thought Sanusi Kane, as we talked about, he played well. I mean, I think that a lot of these guys had really good games, and there's still some stuff to be desired from plenty of guys. All right, we talked about that, but in my opinion, I thought you got to see what you wanted to see for a lot of these guys. I don't know who's going to play next week. Do the Ravens play more of their quote unquote starters? Do they rest guys based off of the injuries they've suffered? I don't know. But again, wins and losses in the preseason don't matter, but performances do. So that's what I took away from that. But that's all I have for you here today on Locked On Ravens. Again, really appreciate you tuning in, and thank you again for 5 years of doing this. It's not possible without everybody who is tuned in, whether it's once, whether you're an everydayer, whether you're somewhere in the middle. It means the world to me, and we're going to keep on going here on Locked On Ravens. So I'm excited for the journey to continue. And of course, I look back on the journey that I've already had, and it's been awesome. But be sure to like, subscribe, follow along video form and audio form. We'll be right back here tomorrow talking more Ravens football. Stay tuned. I'll see you right back here tomorrow on Locked On Ravens.